I see some young participants over there, so they are welcome. We want the new generations to join, so they will be able to carry out more in the future. So they are welcome to join. Okay, anyway.
Thank you, Anna, for that comment. I love it. This is George from Flanders.
Hi, George. Yes, I was seeing somebody joining you there. Okay, but anyway, the good point is that I think I was the first speaker, so I have already spoken more or less. I can advance a bit of what I was going to say, and I'm not going to spend additional time later. And in practice, through the Alliance, through the series of meetings that we organize, we have monthly meetings for members that are substantive meetings, and so we are going to carry out in the coming months a series of events that will deal. Now I see Jean-Luc, so I will just finish this sentence, so to give you the time to settle down. So through the events that we have already planned and some additional events that will be planned ad hoc, we are going to discuss substantively some of the issues that we will see today identified by civil society as priorities, as topics that NGOs considered as urgent to be discussed. So thank you, Jean-Luc. This means that I have already said most of the things that I wanted to say. So the floor is entirely yours. So go ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I have to say I got rejected in the meeting because there were so many participants already. So I think that is really, well, compliments to all those already participating. You were an inch faster than myself, the moderator, and therefore I could not join you immediately. But glad to be here. And again, Anna, it is always a pleasure to see you, all of the civil society, the motivated group of people, the guests, the diplomats as well, who might be joining us today. It's my pleasure to moderate today's discussion. It's co-organized by you, the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and our UNIDC Civil Society unit. Anna, of course, very well known, the chair of the Alliance, and Mirella, who will take the floor then for the UNIDC Civil Society unit a bit later. Sorry to say, I mean, we're still in the hybrid and the virtual format. I mean, we do hear at least that in this part of the world, the situation is somewhat improving, while regretfully, in other parts of this globe, we don't see the same progress. To the contrary, I mean, some very concerning situations there. So the virtual format will remain with us for the time to come. But we have the 30th session of the Commission of Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, following up on the 14th UN Crime Congress in Kyoto, and all this evidently seen the pandemic in a very interesting time framework. The pandemic, I don't need to tell, has reversed decades of progress in reducing poverty around the world. And as I mentioned, I mean, while this part of the globe appears to be heading towards a post-pandemic area, it cannot be business as usual. I mean, young people, women, marginalized groups have been hit very hard, as too often is the case. And when we rebuild up our societies, we will need to take that into account. The southern part of the globe, well, just mentioned as well, it's not only the current health situation, but in many of those emerging economies as well, the socioeconomic backlash is something which we need to follow up very, very closely, because we do know, all of you being involved in criminal justice for multiple years, decades eventually, that research clearly associates inequality, poverty, the lack of socioeconomic opportunities with increased pressures on the rule of law, on the criminal justice system. And if this 2008 financial crisis was to provide any prediction, then we do know that even when you have socioeconomic relief plans rolled out currently, I mean, those will need to be paid for at one stage sooner or later, and that implies cuts in budgets and regretfully to say, crime prevention, which is the best sell, which is basically the best investment. I mean, as we continue saying, I mean, for each dollar invested in prevention, you save 10 later on. But prevention often is indeed, I mean, falling under those cuts in budgets, and that again will add pressure on our criminal justice systems. And this at a time when, of course, I mean, the focus on promoting crime prevention, criminal justice, and the rule of law as drivers of sustainable development is more important than ever to attain a post-pandemic social and political balance. No, the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals are not that. No, they have still very much in the center, a place in the center of many, many discussions. I mean, think as well, I mean, the discussions which we see today within social responsibility among the corporations, the for-profit organizations. So the objectives of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals are still extremely important and as valid today, perhaps even more valid today after the pandemic, as when they were conceived in 2015. And within that, needless to say, I preach here for the converted, SDG 16 is an essential key on that entry door towards the 2030 objective set out. Now, we have been following, as you did, I mean, very closely as UNODC on what the pandemic has done to affect crime. I mean, we had 8 research briefs available. And as we speak, I mean, in a parallel side event currently hosted by the research branch, which is titled COVID and Crime Opportunities and Challenges, we provide again a light on that evolving situation. We give some regional and country level analysis of the impact of COVID-19 on specific crimes and related opportunities and challenges. Stay within this meeting. It will be interesting enough, I promise you. But you see how many things are ongoing at the same time and how much interest is given to the entire framework. Now, I mentioned before, many among you have done the same. I mean, the Global Initiative on Transnational Organized Crime is one who has been particularly very active in crime analysis during the pandemic and the continued evolving situation. Now, this wide range of topical themes within criminal justice have been reflected as well within the declaration of the Kyoto 14th UN Crime Congress. And each of those topics will demand an in-depth discussion involving member states and hopefully also with active involvement of civil society, of you and your group. So the event we have today is a welcoming starting point for a longer process going forward. And I have no doubt that Anna already explained before I could join you what that all entices. Yet the UN Crime Congress in Tokyo has been interesting for another reason too, and perhaps not necessarily such a pleasant one. I mean, spaces for civil society participation within intergovernmental negotiations have multiplied, and you could say that since 1992, the Earth Summit, I mean, that place that gained participatory process, that space created, perhaps we have taken it for granted, and we see today that in our complex, multipolar environment where sovereignty, non-interference are principles which are strongly advocated by many, that space for civil society is declining. So that's something which we really need to give a particular interest for. Having said that, I mean, I can tell you that you were very active in the Kyoto Crime Congress, I mean, we accounted for 283 NGO representatives from 108 organizations registered for the Crime Congress. 21 Japanese NGO representatives participated in person. Now, for the commission ongoing this week, we have 50 NGOs and some 100 registered NGO participants in attendance. So you're very much alive and very much kicking and very much, I mean, active, and we need to make sure indeed, I mean, that we can use that energy for the best, for the benefit of those who deserve to receive our support. Now, in the Kyoto Declaration, I mean, we do, and you definitely will hear more from others on the same, we do have some interesting hooks. I mean, paragraphs 10 and paragraphs 15 of the Kyoto Declaration refer to the need for multidisciplinary efforts and multi-stakeholder partnerships, such as the private sector, civil society, academia, scientific community. But yes, I can say that it's less opening the door as it was, for example, 5 years earlier, 6 years in nominal figures, compared to the Doha Declaration, where we have some stronger language than what we see in the Kyoto Declaration. As well, prevention, I mean, it's so important to us. I mean, definitely civil society as well hasn't come out as strongly as we would have liked to see in that declaration. You as an NGO community had made that point very, very clearly in a joint, in your joint NGO statement in the early days. We are looking forward, I mean, to see, especially in the chapter Advancing Crime Prevention of the Kyoto Declaration, paragraph 21, paragraph 26, paragraph 30, empowering youth, tailor-made crime prevention strategies that take into account local context, addressing the root causes, risk factors, all that again is great hooks for us, I mean, to work closely together. But enough said, I mean, from my side, I mean, I have a panel lined up here, and you, of course, have already been hearing from Anna Alvasi del Frate, but I have as well Philippe Reichel, Justice Philippe Reichel of the Academy of Criminal Justice Science. You know, of course, Philippe Reichel as the Emeritus Professor of Sociology and Criminology at the University of Northern Colorado, and he is the NGO representative for the UN for the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences. I have our good friend Tariq Kossa. Always nice to see you, Tariq, former Director General of the Pakistani National Police Bureau, Interpol Executive Committee Delegate for Asia, and currently working as strategic advisor on several national and international initiatives against organized crime. Also, not to forget, a vice chair of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. Ian Tennant, a good friend based with us here in Vienna, the fund manager for the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crimes Resilience Funds, and as well the multilateral representative in Vienna. Then Mirella de Marfari, I mean, sitting with me on the same floor, well known to you, the chief of the UNODC Civil Society Unit, and as a special guest, a discussant, I mean, later on, Lucy Angers, I mean, very, or should I say, Angers, very well-known participant within the commissions, has worked tirelessly on countless resolutions within the CCPCJ, initiatives, related projects, and I'm very honored to have you here with us, Lucy, at the panel to share some of your observations of over all those years. Now, let's move ahead, and I'm not sure, Anna, you would like to get the floor again, or you found that you have done your work already before. So then we go to the next one. Philippe Reichel, Justice Reichel, the floor is yours. We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for the very nice presentation. I'm going to try to share a slide here, and hopefully that's coming through. It's my pleasure to provide a brief overview of how the Alliance went about preparing our statement for the 14th Congress. I'd like to first take a moment to explain that the Alliance exists to promote cooperation between our members and those UN offices specifically involved in crime prevention and criminal justice issues. Of course, that includes UNODC, but also other offices that may focus on such topics as human rights, children and women, migration, and so on. And importantly, in addition to promoting cooperation among its members, the Alliance also considers the interests of NGOs and civil society as a whole. When the Alliance was charged with preparing a joint statement on behalf of civil society, it was immediately apparent that word and time constraints would not allow us to cover all important topics from our more than 40 members, as well as the interests of other NGOs and civil society more broadly. We decided that using a survey was the fairest way to identify those topics and issues and that have importance across most organizations. The survey results would then provide the statement's focus. It's important to note that the issues specifically mentioned in the final statement reflect consensus amongst the organizations, and the absence in the statement of an issue or a topic of importance to civil society organizations does not mean that those issues are unimportant to the Alliance. The survey was made available in January of this year, and we received 43 responses from 37 different NGOs. 3 of the responses were duplicated organizations, and for 3 others, we had no affiliation provided. As this slide shows, the responses to a question asking how important specific topics are to the respondents and his or her organizations, both crime prevention and gender were identified by more than 50% of the respondents as being extremely important. Having evidence-based policymaking, trafficking in persons, and victims were viewed as extremely important by more than 45% of those responding. These 5 topics were identified in the statement, which I'll be showing in the last slide, as being of utmost importance. As seen in this slide, when the responses of extremely important and very important were combined, the topics highlighted in yellow rose to the top. Of course, several of these were already identified as being of utmost importance, so in the statement we chose to refer to these as additional issues that civil society believe must be addressed. The arrows point to the specific topics we included in the statement. We were also interested to know what NGOs believe to be the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Slide 7 shows the 4 topics we asked about, and while all 4 were considered either extremely or very important, the respondents especially noted that the role of civil society and access during COVID times and the impact of COVID-19 on criminal justice systems are of particular importance. Finally, we asked the respondents about having a commitment in the statement regarding the need to strengthen the role of civil society. As we see in this slide, at least 60% of the respondents believe that civil society should engage in more systematic evaluation efforts. Member states and the UN Secretariat should provide more space for discussion and engagement of civil society, and the pandemic should serve as an opportunity to increase access for civil society. So drawing on those survey results, we prepared the joint statement found in this slide. The highlighted areas reflect the issues identified as having high importance by civil society organizations, and also notes the need to address the pandemic's effect, as well as the need to strengthen the role of civil society. The Alliance will continue to address the issues identified in the survey and continue to actively request feedback from our members and from civil society as a whole as we work to fulfill our mission. Thank you very much.
Many thanks. I mean, that was extremely important. I mean, to coach and to feel around. I mean, on the issues which are of mutual concern. It reflects a bit as well what I mentioned in the early speech. I mean, the need to have a stronger engagement with civil society and the difficulties. I mean, the challenges which we witness here today. Allow me to go to the next speaker. Tariq, I mean, always a pleasure seeing you. I mean, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, John. It's a great honor to be board member of Alliance of NGOs. The Kyoto Declaration was extremely significant in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. States and societies faced existentialist threat. Those who are strong, showing character, grit, empathy, innovation, and are well nigh emerging successful against this worldwide menace. One cannot fight nature, but one can overcome the conflicts and challenges by serious introspection and action against forces that divide us or can potentially destroy us. It is time to rally around a cause for which Kyoto Declaration was a clarion call for a concerted action. Make no mistake, we are at war with ourselves. The pandemic generates effects on criminal markets and places additional pressure on criminal justice systems. As an international community, we believe in a whole of society approach to overcome such challenges, and we encourage effective monitoring of crime trends, fairness of criminal justice systems, and impact of programs and policies. Let me say that transnational organized crimes like drug trafficking, human trafficking, illicit financial flows that include money laundering and terror financing, cyber crimes, and online child abuse are some of the disturbing organized crimes and the trends that we need to tackle now in the light of the Kyoto Declaration. What role should this alliance or the civil society undertake? I place before this House a three-pronged strategy, and that is, first of all, I think we have to reach out. The civil society has to reach out to all the state and the governmental sectors. The example that I give is the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime in Pakistan, reaching out to all the stakeholders and coming with long-term rule of law roadmaps. And civil society played a very active role. So civil society has to reach out. My second point is we must focus on building community resilience, the kind of work which Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime and some of the NGOs involved in the context of crime prevention and criminal justice are doing at the moment is remarkable and need to be sustained. And my third point is that it's the development or capacity building of the criminal justice systems to keep pace with the challenging times. I think this is a big challenge, and we can provide international best practice, share with the national and international organizations who are involved in criminal justice reforms. So reaching out to government and states, building community resilience and improving criminal justice system would be strong, I think, steps or measures that are recommended in this challenging environment. Thank you very much, and we would love to hear views expressed through this forum, the way this debate has been generated. Thank you, Anna, for organizing this and giving me an opportunity to express my views. Thank you, John.
Oh, it was a great pleasure hearing you, and thank you indeed for those three interesting points which we will take with us, to the discussion later on. Reaching out to all stakeholders, and you gave the example of what is happening in Pakistan. I'm absolutely happy to hear so. Apparently my good friend and colleague Jeremy Milsom is doing a good job there, so that's always nice to see that reflected. But the problem is evidently in that, how can you reach out to government states which are not so accommodating to civil society in turn? The second part, yes, global civil resilience by all means. You refer to the good work being done by GTOC. We as well have an urban governance program available. Trying to work together with the grassroots, with the communities, with the private sector, with so many other people within that. And then keeping pace with evolving times. Well, we just see what cybercrime is doing in the US. One of the more advanced technological countries. I mean, how problems have been shaped within that framework. So thank you for that. We take that with us, and we definitely will come back to that later in the discussion. Ian, you were referred to, so you have a big responsibility on your shoulders now to make sure that we can accommodate all what we hope GTOC has to deliver. I mean, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc, and thank you to you and Tarek for the kind words. As the other speakers
Ian, sorry.
So far have mentioned,
Ian,
I'm also
can you check your
very
microphone?
proud to be vice chair of the NGO Alliance, and
Ian, I mean, I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Couple of years, I think we've done a lot under Anna's leadership to start building these coalitions and networks on crime prevention.
Ian, your mic is not working properly.
Hey, everything went black and everyone's come back. Can you hear me?
Up and off, not clearly.
Ian, maybe you want to try it without the video on. Maybe that works better for your internet connection.
Ian, you seem to be frozen now. I mean, that might be due to the emotions, or that might be a technological problem. I think your Ian is connecting and disconnecting, so let's hope that works out. If that were not to be the case, Mirella, we give Ian a few minutes, but if that were not to be the case, be ready to jump in eventually until we have Ian reconnecting. Yeah. Mirella, go ahead.
Thank you, Jean-Luc, and I hope Ian will be able to solve. Probably it's because he is in the Vienna International Center and our internet doesn't always work. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I see Ian. Do you want, Jean-Luc, do you want Ian to try again? Or
Mirella, you just continue, then I will give Ian the floor immediately after you spoke. If that's okay for Ian. Yeah?
Very good. So anyhow, my intervention will be brief. The purpose, and I thank the Alliance for inviting me, was to explain a little bit more of our work in the civil society unit, and to say something about how we can facilitate civil society work in the implementation of the Kyoto Declaration. Now, the way the civil society unit works under the leadership actually of Jean-Luc Lemayeux, who's the director of our division, so we report directly to him, we work through umbrella organization. There are different umbrella depending on the topic of UNODC. So for instance, on drugs, we work with the Vienna NGO Committee on Drugs. On corruption, we work with the UNCAC coalition, UNCAC obviously being the UN Convention against corruption. And when it comes to crime, we have always traditionally worked with the Alliance, and now more since there is a real structure, and the Alliance, I think, is now 1 year, the new Alliance is 1 year old, so congratulations to Anna and to the important work the Alliance has been doing this year. So with this umbrella organization, it's a way we work on policy, and also on we have some operational activity, which means like real project. On policy, this body have been so instrumental for UNODC and the Secretariat in coordinating the work of civil society for intergovernmental meeting. To give you an example an example that you know very well, the work we did in preparation of the Congress, and now the work we do in preparation of the Commission We had a briefing in this new format. We cannot have in-person briefing. We had it on Thursday last week. We introduced the issue. We prepare those who know less how the Commission functions. There is also a coordination to make sure that a broad range of NGOs has the possibility to speak. And that the criteria we use together with the body, also with the Alliance, is a geographical distribution, an ideological view. So we make sure that this comes coordinated, and it's so important when it's online. Really, we have noticed. We learned from experience, and we had cases where it was impossible to give. To leave it the way normally a conference would have functioned, which means that you stand up and go to speak to the conference officer. This is not possible under an online format. Also, as I said, we also, and especially it was Anna who said it at the opening session of the Commission on Monday, celebrating the 30 years of the Commission, that civil society is important to integrate them operationally in the work of UNODC. And this is something that the role of my unit is really to try to promote both, having our own project together in partnership, but also bringing the information to our field office, linking NGOs with our field office, with our substantive unit, etc. From our point of view, since 10 years, we have been working very closely with the UNCAC coalition, for instance, on the review mechanism of UNCAC, and this is through a project building the capacity of CSO to contribute to the review of their countries. Similarly, we have started with the adoption of UNTOC, the UN Convention on Transnational Organized Crime, a project in partnership with the Global Initiative and the Alliance, which has the aim to ensure that multi-stakeholder, which includes also the private sector and academia, are well informed about the review mechanism and are working together to ensure that that exploring all sorts of avenues to make sure that the convention is known and is implemented also by non-governmental stakeholders. And here I take the opportunity to thank the government of the US who has been supporting this project. I would like also to take the opportunity to do a little bit of publicity, because we will have a side event on Thursday showing also a new platform, the What's On platform, where NGOs could interact more. And maybe my colleague will put also the link of the event on the chat so that you know about it. So concluding, yes, NGOs have really a unique possibility to know on the ground. They have the on the ground perspective. They are the one who visit the prisoner. They are the one who listen and help the victims. So the work that they do on the ground is so important to be heard in this intergovernmental body. And I know that many of you felt a bit excluded from the Kyoto Declaration, or anyhow, the way that led to the Congress and, let's put it this way, the Congress itself. But again, today was adopted the resolution L5, which is intended to operationalize the Kyoto Declaration. And there is definitely room for all the engaging with all multi-stakeholder partnership. This resolution says it also clearly that government alone basically needs the support and needs to engage and foster multi-stakeholder partnership. So on this positive note, I will stop. Thank you, Jean-Luc.
Thank you, Mirella. And indeed, I mean, some very interesting principles have been put forward. I mean, means as well and how we can connect. But Ian, I mean, I hope that you are now loud and well with us.
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Please take the floor.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks to Jean-Luc and Tarek for the words earlier. I want to focus on two main points following on from what my fellow Vice Chair and board members, Phil and Tarek, have already mentioned. I want to talk about one, understanding the diversity of civil society, and number two, understanding the reasons why civil society can add value in implementing the Kyoto Declaration. And I think on the first point, understanding the diversity of civil society, it's important to understand who we are talking about. And as Phil, no doubt, realized as he was trying to coordinate the civil society statement, it's quite a broad church with diverse interests. But through our experience at the Global Initiative, we've seen how this diversity manifests itself in reality, where non-governmental individuals, activists and groups are understanding and dealing with, as Mirella said, the effects of organized crime on the ground. And truthfully, there's a perception that NGOs working on organized crime issues tend to be specialized in specific areas. For example, human trafficking, victim protection NGOs. However, there's a growing constituency of NGOs looking at crime prevention and criminal justice issues more holistically. And I think if you look at Tarek's work in Pakistan, you can see what that looks like with sort of individuals, professionals coming together and learning and sharing experiences with each other and engaging with authorities to try and make things better. We've also seen that while there might be a growing network of NGOs working on these issues, lots of NGOs or individuals might have come or started from a different place. So they might have started looking at corruption or human rights, governance, environmental issues, and natural resource issues. And I think they're beginning, as the UN is, to put the pieces together in terms of how all these issues are linked, and crime prevention, as Jean-Luc said, is so important in achieving SDG 16, building strong institutions, building resilient societies. So when we talk about developing and implementing strategies against organized crime and implementing the Kyoto Declaration, I think there are three reasons that show why and how civil society involvement and participation is so important and why it adds value. So as the Alliance, as we go forward, you know, as much as we like to complain about civil society access, we also want to demonstrate the value and to make the substantive arguments as to why that access is so important. So number one, civil society has the information that states and the UN needs. States obviously have the ability to draw on their own information sources, but there are limits to what this information can tell you about why certain situations are the way they are on the ground. What a social worker in a vulnerable community can tell you about how and why crime is prevalent in a certain place completes the picture of what official sources can tell you. Number two, they are embedded and trusted within communities. This is what Mirella was mentioning. They're well placed to ensure a bottom-up and grassroots response to complement the state-level responses that are being implemented. And number three, in some places, civil society has been left as the first responder to organized crime, especially in deprived communities, living under what we term as criminal governance, where the state either will not or cannot provide the basic security and services. And the UN approach, as indicated by the Kyoto Declaration, is just as diverse as civil society itself. If we look at the Kyoto Declaration, as we saw earlier, and the issues that civil society was putting forward, it covers a massively broad range of ground, from domestic violence, international drug trafficking, hate speech, corruption, protection of the rule of law. And the mandates of the UN on organised crime are spread quite widely. It's not just within the UNODC. Phil made this point up front in his statement as well. And for every single one of these issues, everywhere in the world, there is a civil society expert, individual or organisation who can provide data, who can have impact in communities and provide a real-world insight that can improve the implementation of the measures contained in the Kyoto Declaration. So as we move forward, we hope that all of us will not lose sight of the importance and the value of civil society engagement, and as we consider how to improve responses and implement the declaration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian. That indeed, I mean, gives us a very clear view on the advantages brought forward, and I do hope indeed that those who need to hear will understand and appreciate those advantages, which will help us all. It brings me to the last speaker, and I'm extremely happy to have you here with us, Lucie Anger. I hope I pronounced the family name French enough. Excellent. Lucie, you've been with us, I mean, since many years. You have seen, I mean, the crime commissions going year after year. I mean, seeing as well, I mean, how we move forward, I mean, from the small topical area to the very broad spectrum of issues which we are trying to tackle, following an increasingly complex society. I would like to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Luc. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici. Yes, indeed. And thank you very much, Anna, for thinking about me for this important side event. I do have a speech, but I know I only have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So one thing I want to mention, it's so nice to hear this after the negotiations we have been having this week, the negotiations of the Kyoto Declaration. It was extremely difficult. One thing for those of us, and I recognize familiar faces, that it's nice to see Jay, Yola, Michael, and yourself. It's very, what is a bit disconcerting after seeing the commission being established with all the hope that it would be an expert body, that the expert body would continue, however, with member states being involved, is the fact that now the body has become much more political. It's certainly something we saw very, very much in the negotiations of the Kyoto Declaration. You are right, Jean-Luc, the Doha Declaration we had, it was easier to have more references to multi-stakeholder partnerships, civil society and all that. This time it was extremely difficult. However, I have hope. I think in part it's because of the virtual nature of the negotiations, which don't make it that easy to go out with another representative from a member state to negotiate some wording and have a bit more pressure being put on some individuals. So that, I think, has made it more difficult. One thing is, as we know, and as you mentioned, the implementation of the SDGs is very much what the Kyoto Declaration is about. It was in the title, as you know, of the Kyoto Crime Congress. And one thing certainly that we are trying to achieve, I think, with the Kyoto Declaration is the implementation of the different goals. Well, 5 and 16 was mentioned, or obviously 17 as well, that are very important to us. And that cannot be done without a very strong role of civil society. Ian, I was happy to, because it's funny because this morning, because we were in negotiations, the role of civil society was again opposed. Obviously, Canada spoke up, but I have more arguments now due to your excellent one. So we'll continue to push for sure. It's difficult, I think, to convince some governments of the importance, because the way it was explained to me behind closed doors, it's because they see our civil society, they're interfering with how we conduct our policies and all that. And it's not, because one argument we have been using is saying civil society is essential. Which member state can tell us that they don't use civil society? We have so limited limited resources in our governments, that we need people like this who take their time, take their money to help society. And they say, oh, yes, 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 but it's because some of the civil societies are not really civil society. So I think that's what is even more obvious in our discussions today. One thing that we are doing in Canada, and we were just elected to the Crime Commission 2022-2024, so we're really happy about that. We will have a stronger voice. We will also be able to table resolutions. Some of our priorities obviously will remain the same. You mentioned crime prevention. Obviously, crime prevention is an issue that remains extremely important. Jean-Luc, you mentioned, yeah, an ounce of crime prevention counters. Anyway, that saying. We will continue to push for that, but also while restorative justice, as you know, it was very difficult negotiations when we had our last resolution on this issue in 2018, but we'll continue on that one. Also, violence against women, there's a lot, and also vulnerable population, the indigenous peoples in our case, another issue that was difficult and we lost regrettably with a number of countries in the Kyoto Declaration, very difficult negotiations as well. So we will continue with those priorities, but also one thing that we are doing in Canada, and Ian, I know you're interested in particular with your new hat and your older hat in relation to cybercrime. It was mentioned by you, Jean-Luc. We will have, as you know, there's the UN Cybercrime Treaty negotiations have started. Their first meeting was held but not concluded last week, still discussing very, very difficult negotiations. There's certainly one thing that Canada has been pushing very much, in addition to negotiations taking place in Vienna and also consensus, the need for consensus decision making. We have been pushing a lot for a broad role for civil society. It's something also that we are funding. We do have some funding in that context for the civil society and also for least developed countries to be able to play a role in the upcoming negotiations of the convention. Obviously, we'll see how that goes, because as you know, in order for this to happen, the ad hoc committee on cybercrime will need to come up with something to present to the General Assembly. We'll see, but obviously, notwithstanding what will be in the resolution that adopts the report, Canada certainly will continue to be able to fund, and we can speak obviously more broadly about that, and those interested can contact me and Ian. We can be in contact, because I saw that you sent an email earlier this month in relation to cybercrime and the important role of civil society in relation to that. But we're certainly living we live in interesting times. The good news for you, I think, is that governments cannot live without civil society. It's impossible. It's only the recognition at the political level and in the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice is becoming increasingly difficult. Mirella, also you spoke about the role in relation to the review mechanism, and not an easy one either on that one. So anyway, so these are a few thoughts, and sorry, I can send you my intervention, but obviously I think it's more interesting to react to everything that was said. And thank you very much for excellent speakers and for certainly helping us as Canada, as a member state, to continue thinking about how we can engage more civil society. Thank you.
Grand merci, Lucie. No, thank you very much. I mean, I think that was very helpful as well to give us the view, I mean, from the other side of the table, though in the case of Canada, I mean, we all feel to be at the same side of the table. So we work closely together. Somebody who has been very active is an organization which has been very active. I mean, pre and post Kyoto so far has been the Coalition of Faith-Based Organizations. And I see that Michael is with us here and asking for the floor. Michael, please, I mean, go ahead. We don't hear you, Michael.
Try again.
That sounds better. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Lucy. I think you were again so insightful in explaining why we have been excluded. Michael Platzer's a little bit upset that faith-based organizations have been explicitly eliminated from the Kyoto conference. I appreciate the great friendship we have with Jean-Luc and all our friends there at UNODC, but The reality is that faith-based organizations had traditionally been very important in the treatment of prisoners and treatment of the environment, etc. And now we find ourselves outside the door, which is a little bit upsetting in the history what we talked about of 20 years. I'm very glad that Lucy explained now about the new political environment, and we don't have experts anymore, but some junior diplomats who are leading the course. Perhaps someone can soothe me and give me some hope.
Thank you, Michael. And I think excluded perhaps from the formal tables, and that is indeed something very regretfully. But the reality is, I mean, that you are still very much involved with the coalition, civil society at large, in all the operational groundwork, which is so important and really makes a difference for the life of multiple people around. So, I mean, thank you all, I mean, for doing this. I mean, not only the coalition of faith-based organizations, but all your organizations. And I see many friends around the table. I'm looking forward, I mean, to see if there's still one last question which we could take on. If so, let you be known in the chat. And if not, then I would give the floor to Anna.
Thank you very much, Gianluca. I just want to recover the 30 seconds that I couldn't use at the beginning, and to thank all the speakers and everybody. I will take home this what Lucy said, that governments cannot live without civil society. So that will become our motto. And I wish to thank you, Lucy, because really I think that what you said was exactly what we need to hear, what we need to learn. We need this type of conversation to be more frequent and more open. And so by this, I will just invite everybody to our next meeting, 10th of June at 5 p.m., who wants to continue discussing these issues and others.
And before doing that, Anna, can I ask everybody to put on your cameras and give your best smile so that we can take a picture for our communications people? So if you do not mind, I mean, kindly put on your camera, let yourself be seen. George, good to see you. How are you doing? Excellent. We nearly have the square full. A few more, and then can we to have two more eventually? That's nearly there, nearly there. Okay, Anders, is that sufficient for you? Can we take a picture? Fantastic. No. Great.
I hope so. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done to all. Keep up the excellent work. Cheers. Ciao.